Well, Jonathan Wilkinson is the Minister for Energy and Natural Resources. Minister, good to see you again. Thank you for taking the time.
Thank you for having me.
Listen, I want to begin with the Prime Minister, a comment that Mark Carney made yesterday, because he was asked whether or not he was committed to building pipelines. In the past, he said he was open to it. He was asked how committed he was, and he said yes to building pipelines across the country, yes to building energy infrastructure like the carbon capture project associated with Pathways Alliance in Alberta. You know, it has me wondering, is your government actually flip-flopping on its policies related to oil and gas?
Oh no, I don't think so. I mean, we have seen a lot of work and a lot of progress in the oil and gas sector, but also, you know, concurrent work and progress with respect to clean energy technologies and a range of different energy generation technologies. In the case of oil and gas, you know, I've been a long-time supporter of the Pathways work in terms of carbon capture and reducing the production emissions associated with producing oil and gas in a world that continues to use oil and gas. And with respect to pipelines, I mean, it is important for us to diversify our trading relationships. That was essentially the argument for the Trans Mountain Pipeline, which this government helped to facilitate building, and for some of the liquid natural gas facilities, and there are 3 presently being built. But I would also say that it's important this be done in a manner that is consistent with Canada's and international commitments to fighting climate change, and that projects are actually assessed on the basis of project economics. And there are some projects, the LNG projects in particular, that clearly have an economic basis. And going forward, in terms of other kinds of pipelines, those are things that we will have to see. I mean, at the present time, as you will be well aware, there is no proponent for another oil pipeline in this country.
Mm-hmm. Although, you know, we continue to hear from the Alberta Premier, Danielle Smith, putting out a statement yesterday where she still reiterates a lot of the things that she's been calling on Ottawa to do, the Liberal government to do, among them repealing Bill C-69, which goes to environmental assessment. Will your government repeal it if you're now, I guess, working more closely to develop pipelines across the country?
No, we're not going to repeal it. I mean, you know, Ms. Smith says a lot of things. To be honest, I'm not entirely sure that she's always actually read the information, including the Impact Assessment Act. The Impact Assessment Act was designed to ensure that we actually could get major projects built in this country, but that they were done in a manner that respected the constitutional rights of Indigenous peoples, and that we actually addressed concerns that were being raised about the environment. Under Stephen Harper, they did what that government did, what Premier Smith is essentially suggesting, which is they ripped the heart out of the environmental assessment process, and people lost faith that there was any integrity to it, and nothing could get built. I mean, look at the Harper record. Nothing got built in this country. Everything got litigated. So, you know, if Premier Smith actually wants to see things done, you know, and move forward in terms of major projects, she really should be actually applauding the Impact Assessment Act. It works better than the provincial systems in terms of assessment, and we have committed, including her minister, to doing a lot more to integrate the way in which we actually do permitting to try to ensure that good projects can move forward expeditiously.
Okay, what about other measures though, like the industrial carbon tax, the emissions caps? You know, the Trump administration says it would do away with similar measures to allow America to quote, and this, of course, you've heard this from Donald Trump, drill, baby, drill. Will Canada drop those measures to stay competitive with the United States?
Well, the industrial carbon price is a critically important element of having a climate plan that, yes, reduces emissions. And we saw today the announcement of Canada making significant further progress on emissions reductions, which is all good news. But to do so in a manner that is incents innovation and that actually ensures the creation of lower carbon products that are going to have value in the world going forward. Countries like the European Union, or organizations like the European Union, which are putting in place a border carbon adjustment mechanism, which essentially penalizes people who don't actually produce low carbon products. So not doing the work on the industrial price will actually penalize us from the perspective of trying to diversify our exports. So we will continue with an industrial carbon price. I think it's very disappointing that people like Premier Smith, who has said that she actually believes in climate change and believes that we need to actually get to a net zero future by 2050, and oil and gas executives who wrote a letter to a number of folks earlier this week calling for the elimination of the industrial price. A price that they all supported, including a number of very specific quotes that I actually included in my response to them. It's very, very disappointing that that they are aping what Donald Trump is doing, which in the long run is going to be detrimental to our environment, but it's also going to be detrimental to our economy.
Okay, so there are people that have looked to the Liberal government on in terms of protect the environment. There are people now looking to the federal government, the Liberal government rather, to be working on things like pipelines to diversify. So how would you describe Liberal government pipeline policies under Prime Minister Carney? Will there be environmental guardrails? How would you describe those to Canadians?
Well, there absolutely are environmental guide rules, and there is a climate plan, and there are rules around species at risk and biodiversity. But what I would say is let's broaden this a little bit. Like, people get hung up on this issue of pipelines of oil and gas. It is important that we are diversifying our trade. We are diversifying the way in which we use and generate energy. That includes renewable energy technologies. That includes nuclear. That includes hydrogen. And it includes the use of oil and gas over the course of the coming decades in a manner that is consistent with achieving a net zero future by 2050, which is what we all agree from a scientific perspective we have to. You have to actually look at all those things in aggregate. And I think the track record of this government is we've actually been able to bend the curve on emissions in a significant way. I mean, emissions would be more than 40% higher now if we had been where, we had continued on what Stephen Harper was doing. But we've done it in a way which is actually diversifying the economy, including very much in Alberta. So it's been very successful. We have plans in place. We are going to continue to implement those plans. Of course, we will be open to conversations and adjustments where those need to happen. But at the end of the day, this government remains committed to environmental protection and to the fight against climate change, just as it remains committed to building an economy that's going to have a strong future and create good jobs for folks everywhere in Canada.
Mm-hmm. Now, Prime Minister Carney has also talked about new legislation to accelerate projects that involve energy and critical minerals. What can we expect of that? How does that contrast to what we heard from Pierre Poilievre yesterday, promising these pre-approved industrial zones?
Well, I mean, Prime Minister Carney has talked about trade corridors and working with provinces and territories to try to look at trade corridors that actually can assist us with moving goods to market. And that certainly can, in some cases, include energy. For example, interprovincial transmission, which I think is something that most people think, at least on a regional basis, is a good idea. But again, we will need to ensure that we go through this in a thoughtful way that actually recognizes and looks at the economic imperatives and looks at how we actually do this in a manner that is consistent with environmental protection and with the respect for the rights of Indigenous peoples. Yes, we need to do it quickly. Yes, we need in this federation to be working more actively with provinces and territories, which is something that we are doing. But you cannot actually build this country nor get major projects done by simply ignoring the constitutionally protected rights of Indigenous peoples and simply running roughshod over the economy. And that's what Pierre Poilievre is suggesting we do. It is a fundamental misreading of Canada's constitutional architecture. And it is, I guess, perhaps not surprising for a fellow that actually has never worked a day on a major project or in the private sector since he graduated from undergraduate university and went into the House of Commons.
Minister Jonathan Wilkinson, thank you for this. Thank you for answering our questions this evening.
All right. Thank you very much.